In this episode, we're going to look at how to troubleshoot EtherChannel. I'll show you how to do it, and we'll talk about the concepts along the way. A junior technician, let's just call him our intern, they recently configured 4 switches. Users are now complaining that the network is running slowly and they'd like you to investigate. What we're going to do is we're going to examine the physical layer and correct switch port mode issues. We're going to identify and correct port channel assignment issues. And then finally, we'll identify and correct port channel protocol issues. Greetings to all my tech heads out there in the KevTechify Nation, and if you're new here, welcome. This episode is part of my series on configuration examples for the CCNA. I'm Kevin here at KevTechify. Let's get this adventure started. Troubleshoot Ethernet. Here, I got our packet tracer lab open. On the left side, I have our work area with all of our devices, our connections. That's where we'll do our configuration. On the right side, I have the packet tracer activity window. I have it open up there so I can follow along with the directions. Here in this lab, we're going to troubleshoot some Ethernet. We're going to examine the physical layer and correct any issues we have. So we're going to take a look at what our port settings are. Then we're going to identify the correct port channel assignment. And then we're going to identify and correct port channel protocols. Looking there. Here we have some information. We have 6 different port channels. Here are the connections between them. They're basically two connections between each switch, create that port channel, and then what protocol we are using there. As you can see, we're using LACP active for all of those connections. And then here we have our device table. So it's basically the port channel table just regurgitated by listing out the connections by the device. So switch 1 has got groups 1, 2, or 1, 3, and 5, and these are the ports that are associated with them. On to part 1. Part 1, examine the physical layer and correct the switch port mode issues. Now, to examine the physical layer, my go-to all the time is I like looking at the running config to start with, just to see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to click on switch 1 right here. Get into my CLI. Make the window a little bit wider so it wraps better. Log in, type in enable to get into privilege exec mode. And then, like I said, I like to use the show running config command. That gives me just a nice overall view, and a lot of times you can see what's wrong by just looking at that. Coming down here on switch 1, if we go over to our instructions on switch 1, we've got gig 1, 2, fast Ethernet 23, 24, and 21 and 22. So 21, 22, 23, 24, and gig Ethernet 1 and 2. Let's go on and scroll down to it. I'm hitting spacebar to go all the way down. Here we have 21 and 22, channel group 5, and they're set to trunking, so that all looks good. Then we have 23 and 24. 23 and 24 is channel group 3. Those are looking good. And then we have our gigabit Ethernet faces. Once again, up here, it is on switch 1. The group 1. Gig 1 and 2. Those are all looking good, and those are all trunk ports, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and minimize that, open up switch 2, click in my CLI tab, log in quickly, so enable, then go and do my show running config, and switch 2. We have our gig ports, fast Ethernet 21, 22, 23, and 24. Hit spacebar to go on down to our ports. Here's 21 and 22 over here. 21 and 22 were group 6. 21 and 22 is group 6. And they're access ports. Oh, geez, they shouldn't be access ports. They should be trunk ports. They should be all trunk ports. We're going to have to go in there and look at that. So 21, 22, 23, 24 are all access ports along with our gigabit. Those are all access ports. So those should be set as trunk ports. Okay, as long as we're here, let's go ahead and correct that. Now to correct that, we get into global configuration mode, config T. We can do interface, and we can do the range command at this point. That'll handle all of them. And once again, you can combine non-contiguous interfaces together, so you can do 1, 2, and 6 and 7 and cover that range of those. But we have 21, 22, 23, 24, so we can do a 21 to 24 range, and then we have gig 1 and 2. We can do all of that together. And so we have interface, space, range, space, and then our first grouping. Fast Ethernet 0/21 space dash space. That space dash space, or dash or minus sign. That's important. If you don't have that in there, you'll get an error. So 21 space dash space 24, and then we'll put a comma in there. And then gig 0/1 space dash space 2. Once we got that information in there, we can see our prompt has changed once again. And from here, we can turn those ports into trunks. We do that with switch port space mode trunk. So switch port space mode space trunk. Now you notice the interfaces went down. They make the change, and then they come back up. Notice we have some things happening here with our dynamic trunking protocols in there. So we have that. Let's exit out. Let's exit out. Let's do our show run again one more time to make sure that we are all trunks. So 21 is a trunk, 22 is a trunk, 23 is a trunk, 24 is a trunk, and gig 1 is a trunk, and we got a couple more. Our port channels now have went up. So that apparently is taking care of an issue. So gig 1 is a trunk and gig 2 is a trunk. Let's make sure they're in the right port channels. 21, 22, that was over here in group 6. 23, 24, that is in group 3. That's what we have right here. And gig ether 1 and 2, that is in grouping 2. So we have all that information right there. Okay, that takes care of 2. Let's minimize that, go into 3. My window a little bit bigger, CLI tab. Come on. Enable, go run, take me down to my interfaces. On switch 3, here's our information from our table. So gigs 1, 2, then fast Ethernet 21, 22, 23, and 24 again. So 21, 22, they're trunks. They're in group 6. That's looking good. 23 and 24, those are both trunks. 23 and 24 were in group 4. And our gigabits 1 and 2, they're both trunks, and they are part of group 1. That information all looks good here on switch 3, and let's go in and check switch 4, see if there's any problems there. Enable config. Oh, sorry. Once we're in privileged exec mode, we can do a show running config. I space bar down till I'm at the end, and then I scroll back up because usually I can center it better. Over here in our document, this is our information. Once again, we're using the same ports, fast Ethernet 21 to 24 and gig 1 and 2. Take a look at our output. 21, 22, those are set as trunks. 23 and 24, those are set as trunks. And our gig Ethernet 1 and 2, those are set as trunks. There we go. We got all the physical ports corrected. On to step 2B. Step 2B, correct any ether channel ports that are not configured as trunks. Now we're going to, first step was we looked at the physical ports. Now we're going to look at the logical ether channel ports that are configured as, or not, make sure they're configured as trunks. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. We'll start on switch 1 right here. Still got our running config up here, but I like to redo it just to make sure that there was no changes. I space bar down and typically scroll back up to see what I'm looking for. And here we have it. We have that the port channel interface. So On switch 1, we've got groups 1, 2, 3, and 5. So we have those here, and those should all be set as trunk. If we look at the output from our running config, we can see that port channel 1 is not configured as a trunk. It needs to say switch port mode trunk to be there. Just like down here for switch port channel 3 and 5, they say switch port mode trunk. They are configured as trunks. What we need to do is go in there and configure this as a trunk. Okay. Let's go ahead and do that as long as we're here. So config T, global configuration mode. Then we go into the interface of that port channel. So interface space port dash channel space 1, because that port channel 1 was the one we needed to fix. Go ahead and hit enter. Once we're into that interface, you can see that the prompt has changed again. So we did change that. Now we can go ahead and make sure it's a switch port. So switch port mode space trunk. That will set that as a trunk. We can exit out, do a show run. And right here at the top, we can see port channel 1 is now a trunk, 3 is a trunk, and 5 is a trunk. That's the channels we have here. Okay, go ahead and minimize switch 1. Let's go to look at switch 2. And as you can see, we're starting to get different symbols on our connections. Now all of a sudden, this connection over here, our fast Ethernet 23, is down. We made a change on S1. This is now down. We have STP happening in here, shutting down some ports. And we have the recalculations happening as we bring ports up and down. Okay, let's go ahead and look at switch 2. Open that up. Let's do a show running config again. Take us down to, oh, I hit spacebar. I got to scroll back up all the way there. And here is our interfaces for our port channels. On switch 2, we've got group 2, 3, and 6. Group 2, 3, and 6. We got 2. Port channel 2 is a trunk. That looks good. Port channel 3, that's set as a trunk, but port channel 6 is not a trunk. We need to go in there and fix that. Config T for global configuration mode, interface of port channel, and that was 6 we had to do, right? I'm just going to quickly scroll up. Port channel 6 is the one we need to set as a trunk. So interface port channel 6. Go ahead, turn that into a trunk by using switch port mode trunk. I gotta spell switch port right. I'm gonna look at switch 3. Switch 3 here. Once again, we'll do our show run. I spacebar down all the way up and I scroll. I spacebar all the way down and I scroll. On switch 3, we've got groups 1, 4, and 6. They should all be trunks. Channel 1 is set as a trunk. Channel 4 is set as a trunk, and 6 is set as a trunk. That's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and check switch 4 quick. Show run again. I spacebar all the way down and scroll back up. Switch port 4 has 2, 4, and 5 assigned to it. Group 2 is a trunk, port channel 4 is a trunk, and port channel 5 is a trunk. That's all looking pretty good. That takes care of looking at part 1. On to part 2. I hope you're liking this episode on practical configuration examples. Leave a comment on what you think about these configuration examples. If you still have a question or comment, please let me know below. You can also visit my website at KevTechify.com for all of my details and how to get these episodes in video and podcast form. Part 2, identifying correct port channel assignments. Now, sometimes it can be confusing when you're assigning physical ports to logical ports and which are you configuring. And a lot of times you may get the wrong physical ports assigned to that logical port. What we need to do is let's go in and verify we have the right physical ports in our logical channels. And go ahead and click on S1. We're in our CLI. And then the command we're going to use right here is show EtherChannel summary. This gives us a nice summary of all of our EtherChannel settings. What we can see here is the information. Up here at the top just gives us a little table of what the symbols mean. Then we get some updated data on what we're using, number of aggregations, channel groups in use. But down here is the information we like to look at. We have the different groups. So here's group 1. Port channel 1, specified by this. It has the symbols capital S and capital D. Capital S stands for it's a layer 2 switch, or sorry, it's a layer 2 port. That's looking pretty good, but it's also down. Or apparently we're gonna have to go in and look at this and figure out what's wrong. We're also looking and seeing that it's running the LACP protocol, and gig Ethernet 1 and 2 have an I. Capital I is it's in standalone mode. So something here, it's not saying that these ports are down, they're in standalone mode. The ports aren't configured correctly. So there is an issue somehow there. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at 2 quickly. Exit out, make sure we are in global configuration mode. Once again, show EtherChannel summary. Here's our command. Here's our 3 Ether channels. Once again, we're on switch 2. We got 2, 3, and 6. These are the assigned ports. So group 2 is S and U. So it is capital S is we're saying it's a layer 2, and up is in use. Then over here we're using LACP. Here's our gig 1, gig 2 with a capital P. Capital P means they are in a port channel. Looks like all those are correct, or sorry, all of those are configured correctly. Group 3, S and U, once again, layer 2, and we're up using LACP, and P means we are in a port channel. Group 3 looks good. Group 6, right here, is S and D. D means down. And so switch 2, this group is down here, connecting switch 2 to switch 4. I, once again, stands for in standalone mode or independent. And so there's something wrong with that configuration. We'll have to go in there and take a look at that. Let's go into switch 3. Show Ether. Whoops, come on. You gotta spell EtherChannel correctly. EtherChannel summary. Here we go. Now look at this. All of these Ether channels are down. 1, 4, and 6 are all down. We're running PAG-P is our protocol, and all of the interfaces have an I. They are in a standalone mode. They're independent. They're not part of a channel. They're not in a port channel. And so we're going to have some work to do on there. And then the last one we're going to inspect here is switch 4, show Ether channel summary. Oh, we got all sorts of fun stuff here. So group 2 is a layer 2, and it's in use, running LACP. We are looking at gig 1, gig 2 with a P so that they are in a port channel. That one looks correct. Down here, group 4, it has an S and a U, so it's a layer 2, and it's in use, running LACP. We have 4 ports in there. 2 that have P's by them, so they're in port channels. 2 that have I's with them. They are standalone or independent. Okay, so there's something weird in the configuration. If we look over here back at our requirements, switch 4, we can look at the Ether channel 4 has 23 and 24. That would be these two. But then Ether channel 5 has 21 and 22. That would be these two, but they should be down here in group 5. We have some work cut out for us there. Looks like all the switches, we do have some work to do. Let's go on. So that was part 2, step 1, where we're just examining what's happening. Part 2, step 2, correct port channel assignments. Now we're going to go in there and correct any of those port channels that we saw were wrong. The only ones we saw were wrong, that had the wrong physical ports and the logical ports, were right here. This is on switch 4. And this is the only place where we saw that the physical ports were wrong. And so what we have to do is come back over to our requirements, looking at our requirements. So port channel 2 has gig 1 and 2 in there. That looks good. Then our group 4 right here, our port channel, our port channel 4 has 23 and 24 in it. We got 23 and 24, but then 21 and 22 are the ones that are misassigned. And if we look a little bit further, for our group 5 here has 21 and 22. What we need to do is move them here from port channel group 4 to port channel group 5. Now, that's simple. That's easy to do. All you have to do is go into the interface and re-enter the correct channel group command. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Get into global configuration mode. Config T, interface, and I'm going to use the range command. So interface range, and then fast Ethernet 0/21. That's the start of the range. That's the first one that's bad right here. And then it ends at 22. So I put 0 space. Okay, fast Ethernet 0/21 space dash space, and then 22 is our last one. Gives us the range of those, and all we have to do is enter in that channel group command with that correct group number of 5. So channel dash group space 5. That's our number, and then we have to specify what mode. And here we're going to have the mode of active. Got to spell active correctly. So once again, I just hit the up arrow, left arrow over to move the cursor, fix the spelling error, hit enter, and then we can see we have now got some of the interfaces went down, went up. That allowed them to change from what channel groups they were. Port channel 4 went down, port channel 4 is down, interfaces are down, they're coming back up, and finally port channel 5 did come up. Exit out, and if we do that show ether channel command again, or if I hit up arrow a couple times, now we can see that we are here, we are assigned, but we do have an error here. We are looking at there's a protocol or an issue happening. But we did correct the channel port assignment, so that's part 2, step 2. Now we're going to go down to part 3. We're going to look and identify and correct any port channel problems. First thing we need to do is look at identifying our protocol issues. So here it says in 2000, IEEE released LACP, which is an open standard. For compatibility reasons, the network design team chose to use LACP across the network. The design team has made it a requirement that all ports participate in Ether channel need to actively negotiate the link as LACP. Verify that the physical ports are configured as indicated in the topology and the port channel table. Once again, we're going to go through here. We're going to use the show Ether channel summary, and then we're going to make sure that we are using LACP. We are going to make sure that we are using LACP. Well, I can tell you right here on switch 4, we do have a problem. But let's start at switch 1, work through this systematically. Using the show ether channel summary command. Once again, gotta spell stuff correctly. There we go. And we are looking here that we are using LACP. Group 1 has LACP, Group 2 has LACP, Group 3 has LACP. That's looking pretty good for switch 1. Let's go ahead and look at switch 2. I'm going to re-enter the command. Even though it shows the results right there, I still like to redo the command so that way you have fresh information on your screen. So show ether channel summary. Here looking at switch 2, we are running LACP, LACP, LACP. That's all looking pretty good. We're going to go down, now look at switch 3. Re-enter the command, show ether channel summary. Remember, we're supposed to be running LACP. LACP, the open source, the multi-vendor protocol for EtherChannel, not PAGP, which is a Cisco proprietary. Well, we're going to have to go in and change 3. Let's look at 4 quickly. So, EtherChannel summary. EtherChannel summary. We've got 2 out of the 3 saying LACP, but port channel 4 has nothing. And so we'll need to go in there and look and see what is happening with that. I still think it has maybe something to do with this I here, meaning we need to probably go in and look at the configurations on those ports or something like that. But we'll take a look at that here in a second. Okay, big issue we saw right here was this is running PAGP. We needed to run LACP. Let's go ahead, go in there and correct those problems. Now what you have to do is go into each group of ports. We are in switch 3. And so what we have to do is we have to go into gig 1 and 2 and then assign it to LACP with a group 1. We have to set it to active because we want it to actively look. Then we have to change and look at these ports. Change that to active for group 6. Oh, sorry, that would be group 4. And then we have to change this to active for group 6. So we got to do each group of those 2 ports individually. First, we get into global configuration mode, config T. Now we can do interface, space, range, and then we can do our first range. Our first range is going to be gig 0/1 space dash space to 2. That would be our first range. Here we can go ahead. When you're making changes to that channel group, you actually have to delete that channel group first and then recreate it. Now, here we're going to go ahead and say no space channel group. That will delete that channel. And once we delete it, we can go ahead and create it. And so channel group 1, so space 1, and then we need to say what mode it is. Once again, we want to use LACP and have it actively looking. If you don't remember what you can do, if you don't remember what you need to, you can always put a question mark in here. And once again, we are using LACP and we're unconditionally looking for it, so it's active. And if that description is not clue, find the other not clean. You can go down and find the other LACP and say enable LACP only if the LACP device is detected. And so the passive here for LACP is just sitting back and saying, hey, if you start the conversation with me, we can negotiate our connection, but I'm not going to actively start that. Where up here, using active with LACP is going to say, okay, I want to make a connection. Will you make a connection with me? They are looking to make that connection. And so what we want here is we're going to use the active. So we can just type in active there, hit enter. States go down, make a change, states go up. We can see our port channel went up. I think we have some pretty good things that are happening. That takes care of gig 1. Remember, we need to work through all of these port channel groups and interfaces. Now let's go ahead. Let's take the next one. Let's go ahead and look at Fast Ethernet 21 to 24. We don't have to exit out right here. We can just change interfaces. So interface space range space Fast Ethernet 0 slash, and once again that is 21 space dash space 22. We got to delete that existing channel group, so no space channel dash group. There you go. And now we can create it. Start off with channel dash group, and then the number of our group. We are doing Fast Ethernet's 21 and 22, so that's 6 here. So group 6, and then we're setting the mode to active again. So mode active. So again, we'll see several things go down, several things come back up. That's looking pretty good. And finally, let's go in and do the last one here. Our channel group 4 on Fast Ethernet 23 and 24. Interface Fast Ethernet 0 slash, and that was 23 space dash space 24. Oh, we got to do the range. Man, I forgot the range. So interface space range space, and then we have our Fast Ethernet 23 to 24. We didn't get an error, so we assume the change happened. We delete the existing channel, so no space channel dash group. There you go. And we can now recreate that channel group. So channel group space, and then once again we are doing channel group 4 here. The channel group 4, and the mode is active for LACP active. Exit out, exit out. We'll do that show EtherChannel summary again to make sure it is configured correctly. And we are good to go. That was Packet Tracer Labs 6.3.4 Troubleshoot EtherChannel. It was my pleasure to provide you with this wonderful episode on configuration examples. If you like this episode and you got value out of it, please click that like button, give a 5-star rating, leave a comment. This all helps me bring you more great content. Please take a minute to subscribe to my channel. All my socials and contact information are on my website, KevTechify.com. There you can find out how to get all these episodes in video and podcast form. Thank you so much for watching this episode of my series on practical configuration examples for the CCNA. I've created 4 wonderful playlists for you on the CCNA. These episodes, I go through all the concepts that Cisco calls out for the CCNA. Once again, I'm Kevin. This is KevTechify. I'll see you next time for another great adventure.